Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to the GEB America podcast, brought to you today by Energized Health. Visit energizedhealth.com for more info. We appreciate those folks. Hey, a very special welcome also to those that are with us now on pray.com. And if you don't know what that is, go to pray.com/GEB America. We've got some video content there, some ORU content, and of course, this podcast and another podcast as well. Well, hey, I'm excited today. Grandparents and parents, pay attention. This is going to be a really great show for you. We have a friend of ours. I've known this guy for a long time. He's an influential creator of kids and family redemptive content, executive producer and showrunner of the wildly popular Wing Feather Saga series. Chris Wall is with us today. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, when I heard season 2 was upon us, I'm like, I got to get Chris on and let's talk to our audience because we, and I put myself in this category, always looking for great content for kids. That is kingdom-centered, moral, isn't going to sneak things in. I won't mention names, but you probably heard the very, very popular toddler program this last year actually had some content in it that was highly inappropriate to be introducing to 2 and 3 year olds, which is a part of the agenda of our culture. And that's why I wanted to have you on and talk about this series. So tell everybody there at home about it, how they can access it, and then we'll kind of go from there and talk about how you got to this point.
Yeah, well, it's called the Wing Feather Saga. It's based on a set of fantasy novels written by Andrew Peterson, who many folks will know from his music career. He has a song that many have heard called Is He Worthy? But Andrew and I got to know each other back in 2006 using some of his songs for our VeggieTales series, which I produced. And then in 2008, he handed me the first book in the series. And so I read along with our 6 children as the books released through 2014. And then in 2015, just was so moved by this story that was both whimsical and charming, like reading Chronicles of Narnia, but then had these really epic and powerful things to say about identity and family and sacrifice and just all the great stories. It reminded me quite a bit of Lord of the Rings. I said, hey, what if we got together and worked to bring this into a visual medium? So even more people could access it, and that became this animated series. Season 2 has just released with Angel Studios, the same folks who created and helped distribute The Chosen, and they've been an amazing partner to help us distribute and market the show, get it out to people. We are so thankful to have the opportunity to be crowd-funded, and so we've raised the funds for season 1 and 2 through the fans. So not a executive somewhere saying, hey, go make this, but rather our fans coming alongside and saying, hey, make this show. And that has brought season 1 and 2 to life. 13 episodes out there now that cover the story of book 1 and most of book 2 for those that like to read along. Mm-hmm. And the family and fan response has been just amazing so far.
So how can grandparents and parents find and download and play this for their kids in the living room?
Angel Studios. So the Angel Studios app on your television, on your laptop, on your mobile phone, whatever that is, it is right there. We are one of the shows offered alongside many other great movies and TV series.
Well, that's so true about the mobile part of it. That's kind of the norm. I'll admit it. I want to put something on the phone and say, here, watch this while we wait on our order at the restaurant. And this is, great, as it says, redemptive content. And I love that. Tell us a little.
The other thing I'll just say, Dave, and that it targeted from how we created the series was to make it family accessible.
Right.
I think, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of shows that kids are into, but it's really hard for an adult to watch, right? It has just things that oh gosh, this is not for me. And there's plenty of adult content that's just not the right thing to share with our kids. And I think particularly in this kind of serialized story, a story being told over multiple seasons, We have been called at times, and I think this is really funny, Game of Thrones for kids.
Interesting.
And Game of Thrones is totally inappropriate for adults, frankly, but certainly
right. Yeah.
And this series fits in that slot where we're finding so many families are making Wing Feather Saga family movie night, right? Where they're gathering around and like good old chapter books read aloud by the family. They're engaging in watching this unfold episode by episode, talking about it as a family. And we actually see in our little Angel Studios dashboard viewership spikes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. It's really encouraging. I think that the more we can enjoy stories together as a family, it brings a connective something, right? I just was in Tulsa recently celebrating the commencement graduation of our daughter from ORU, and my parents were like, hey, can we watch the latest episode of Wing Feather together, like our whole family? So we had grandparents, parents, and kids all gathered around. And I'm like, this is delightful, getting to watch my own show with this group. But my dad is like totally into it.
That's cool.
Man, I love what the meaning of this character and the way they reacted in this moment. And I'm just like, that is great. Because, again, a lot of family and kids content tends to be really targeted just to kids or misses them entirely. And that was certainly a goal of the series.
So let's go back to what you said about crowdfunding, because our audience, if you've been listening to the podcast this entire season, you may remember a couple of months ago, one of the episodes we had Neil Harmon, the CEO of Angel Studios, on. And he talked about the concept that really has turned things, Hollywood included, on its head, that instead of an executive, like you said, in some office and in some really expensive part of a downtown, whether that's, New York or LA, making the decision for what gets produced. Yeah. This is a way to allow people to see and to vote and to decide as part of the Angel Guild, but to then be able to invest in this particular series or movie being made. And that's exactly what you guys have been able to do. And really, the response has been quite remarkable.
Yeah, it really has been. I think we stepped out of that door in May of 21. And this idea of crowdfunding, meaning not like a Kickstarter where it's donor-based, but people are actually buying shares in the Wing Feather Saga animated series, right? So they're shareholders. And we opened the door and sold our first $1 million of investment in the first 48 hours. And then sold out of, the SEC only allows you to sell $5 million a year. We sold out in 20 days.
Wow.
To get season 1 off the ground. And it was such a vote of confidence because we had been turned down over and over and over by your Netflix, Amazon, Paramount, all the lineup, which said, yeah, we like Wing Feather, we're just not sure we're into it, right? And I get it. They've got their own reasons for making the decisions about the kind of content they're going to create.
Sure.
But we really believed that families loved this story, both from the books and also just from knowing Andrew. And so when we reached out to the crowd, right, and said, hey, would you be interested in this? There was such a resounding yes, right, to say, go make that content. Please go make this series. And it just gave us such a boost. And since then, we've done another couple of rounds to help for season 2. And now we head into season 3. And we've just crossed over $12 million invested. Now, when you're competing against the billions of dollars of content created by Netflix and others, this is a small drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But it is a statement piece that says we want this to exist. And what I find really interesting, Dave, in this process is it's not dissimilar to what Phil Vischer and Mike Naraki went through in starting VeggieTales. So this was 1991 for them, right? And so they used catalog ads and order by mail, right? For VHS cassettes. And those VHS cassette sales was their way of crowdfunding. And they went through the same thing. And at the time, it was really funny in that journey. Walmart was like, yeah, we're not sure about this religious content, this VeggieTales thing, but if you could just take out some of that Jesus stuff and the Christian stuff, we'll probably be into it here at Walmart, which is really funny to think about now. And Phil and Mike were like, no, we're going to keep going with our crowd. Our audience is into it. They're really liking it. We're just going to keep making it. It's modest compared to the larger industry. Well, a couple years later, of course, boom, they're like, Walmart's like, I don't care what's in the box, we're going to sell it. And I think we're in a similar place of, while all those platforms were hesitant, not sure about Wing Feather, we don't know where it sits. Then we prove out, actually, there's a vibrant audience for this. and there are people who want to see it made. Oh, okay, well, actually, we should talk. And so that'll be a fun journey for us over the next couple of years. But it takes time, and it takes this dedication of people watching it. And I think the other thing is, I don't know if you remember this, we're both a little old now, but
Yeah.
I was in college, and a girl I was dating at the time, my freshman year, I think, we were on spring break, and she said, hey, there's this thing called VeggieTales. We should all watch it. And a bunch of us were like a kid's thing? No, we're good. Like, no. And she was really insistent. You got to watch it. She put in Dave and the Giant Pickle. And I was like, okay, this is fantastic. This is so funny. And it's funny how we're suspicious of new things. So even now, as I'm talking about Wing Feather Saga and people are listening, they're going, yeah, I don't know. It's not on Netflix. It's not on Disney. It's probably not any good. When I was first introduced to The Chosen, people were like, oh, there's this Chosen thing. You should check it out. Where is it? It's in its own app. Yeah, it's going to be terrible. It's a funny thing. We're biased to the doorway it comes through, and I think that's a weakness, right? When the Kendricks were first making their movies, there was like, I don't know about this. And then we saw some were like, actually, that's pretty fantastic for a church making movies. When the Irwin brothers started making their movies, right? We're like, I'm not sure about this football thing. We'll see. Then I Can Only Imagine happens. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, it's really good. And we're slow to convince. And I would just say, as a people, let me charge you, go try new things. There are lots of new content creators right now making really compelling material that many of us will miss because it's not through a familiar outlet or through something we trust. And I think that's a mistake. And I hope that we can rally around. Sure, I want you to watch Wing Feather. Yeah, go watch it, please. But more importantly, I'm looking at a bunch of creators around me who are struggling to get people to pay attention to what they're making. Right. And Angel Studios is doing a good job of helping some of those folks forward. Right. They're lifting them out of the muck of I'm never going to get my movie or my TV series seen and saying, hey, go watch this movie, go watch this TV series. And that's a part of it. But I think as a viewer, we have to make choices to go watch things and support things that maybe are not in our normal feeder. Right. Wherever we're watching content, if it's not in that feeder, we sometimes just don't pay attention to it. And that can be to the detriment of great storytellers.
Yeah, and I think that, you and I, like you said, you made the comment about us being older now, I think it's a little bit of, if you grew up in the church, there's a little bit of PTSD. You and I were both, I totally was reminded of this recently, you and I both were homeschooled for a period. You grew up in that church environment, and you have a little bit of PTSD from bad, cheesy Christian content.
Absolutely.
And I will second what you said is, it's 2024. There has been a lot of good change in this area.
Remarkable.
You know, it is. And, it isn't the 90s where we're like, oh, we didn't want to share certain things with friends because we were kind of a little bit, embarrassed. The content that's out there in some cases, you're just a little shy to try. It's phenomenal, and
it happened in music exciting. First. I think music kind of led the way, which is the area you and I crossed during our time with Oral Roberts University as students. And music in that era was beginning to break out and say it's not just the cheaper copy of the better secular version, right? Which is kind of we first started off in Christian music listening to. It started leading the way. And that's happened now, right? We see really fantastic artists leading the way in their craft. And not just copying the popular version of and making a clean version or a Christian version, which is derivative. And I think any derivative art we all kind of react against and go, that's just a copy of, right?
Right. Well, I mean, as is seen throughout the last several years, I kind of feel like Hollywood's run out of ideas anyway. I mean,
they're copying themselves.
We have another Planet of the Apes movie. I mean,
I know.
I mean, it's like how many times can we reboot Superman? I mean, and look, I grew up on comics. I love Marvel and DC. I get it. And I wish they would go deeper, the content of the comics that, characters that we haven't even seen on the big screen. But I digress. So let me ask you this. Wing Feather wasn't like, your first foray into this space. Tell people you actually, kind of started post-college at Impact Productions, which they were kind of groundbreaking in a number of areas, and then kind of forward how that brought you to where you are now with your own entity. It's
fun looking back now because I've had the great privilege of coming along these pioneers and disruptors in different places. When I was in high school, it was going to Toy Maker's Dream, right? It was changing the way live theater, interactive live theater, multimedia stuff could do because of Tom Newman's vision for that with Impact, right, in the 80s and 90s, which really was my connection ultimately to Tulsa and then attending ORU as a student. Then Phil Vischer with VeggieTales, right, begins to say, hey, I think we could do kids media differently. And I want to go in with redemptive statements like, God made you special and loves you very much. We just heard this commencement speech from Rick Warren at the graduation this year around love, right? That love is that thing. And the whole time he was talking, I was thinking about this thing that Phil had with VeggieTales, which is I want to tell kids they think that God hates them and that they're going to go to hell and he doesn't love them. And in fact, it's not true that God is love and God loves them. And I'm going to put that core to it. God made you special and he loves you very much. That was the core idea. And I got to come alongside Phil and produce the VeggieTales series for a little over 10 years. And so I've had the privilege of coming alongside these pioneers for my whole career. I didn't aim for this, Dave. I left ORU just like, all right, God, where do you want me? And it led to Impact. And that turned into, I got to be a part of the Max Lucado animated thing, You Are Special, which was just incredible. And then ultimately got recruited to join VeggieTales, and that's incredible. And then I felt God put a hand on my back in 2015 and say, hey, I want you to go chase this Wing Feather thing. And it had a lot of twists and turns, places of, oh, well, it's not going to get made. Netflix said no for the third time. We just kept knocking on the door. And the last time they said no was for a very pointed reason that I was like, okay, yeah, we're not on the same page about the kind of story we want to tell. They're looking for a kind of story to do a kind of thing programmed in a certain way. And when they're the ones with the money, they get to say that's how it's going to be. And so our story would have had to been wildly changed to fit the agenda that they had for the kind of content they wanted. So I really feel like God saved us from a thing that would have been bad, because we would have been told, if you want the money to make this series, you'd have to tell it a certain way. And so that guided us into now what Wing Feather Saga has become. And I've just been delighted by the journey. And I would tell you that I've remained open and curious about what's next. VeggieTales was part of DreamWorks Animation. So I was with DreamWorks up through their feature film division the last 3 years of VeggieTales. And it was a remarkable experience. They were like, hey, you guys speak Christian and you do it pretty good. We just want to help you do that more. And they were like, we're the house that made Prince of Egypt, so we understand faith content can have a certain market. So y'all go do that. And it was just an incredible time. At the end of that, they were like, great, come join us at DreamWorks and keep producing with us. And I just felt like, no, I don't think that's my path. I'll just go make something. Who knows what it would be. And it may not have the kind of redemptive threads that have so marked the path God's put me on. And I think with Veggie, it was an overt side. And with Wing Feather, it's a more subversive. We have very much intentionally crafted this, as C.S. Lewis talks about, sneaking past the watchful dragons that an audience says, oh, you're trying to speak truth to me. And just tell a story that has woven into its fabric redemptive ideas. And we believe, kind of like the C.S. Lewis idea of awakening that sense of deep longing through story. Through music does this too, that I don't understand. I feel an ache, I feel a need, and something in this story is identifying that. And where that leads that person in their kind of quest for ultimate truth, I don't know what that path will be, but we certainly can stir the pot, the kind of stories we can tell.
Yeah, and I think it's something that can be shared, that, families of faith can share this with their friends and other family members. And it'll, the word says some sow and some reap. There has to be layers to it. It takes time. And so something that I wanted to touch on, I think would be really good. So to somebody out there that's listening, and maybe they're a business owner, or they live in a foreign country and whatever industry they're involved in, they're very far away from children's animated series as a profession. But something you said a minute ago, I thought kind of struck a chord with me, and I wanted to touch on that, is talk a little bit about this concept of finding your path. Because I think we both know what it's like to try to go down a path that maybe is somebody else's, or you feel like you think that's the way you're supposed to go in this journey, following what is God's ultimate desire and goal for what you're going to do in this world. But talk about that and kind of what that was like for you, and then maybe just kind of would help people that are like maybe in that point where they're struggling a little bit with that.
Yeah, that is, I think any one of us are looking for that place that brings that deep satisfaction, whether that's a farmer in Indiana doing his work, whether that's, somebody working in the healthcare industry, to those in entertainment. We all want to find that place. And I think for me, I knew early on in my life that I was drawn to innocent stories, right? Stories that appeal to a child, and it was something that was kind of distinctively part of at ORU, finding that a bunch of my friends could watch rated R films that I just couldn't. Like if I watched a good war movie, I would have nightmares for weeks. I'm like, okay, there's something about the way God's made me that is really distinct. Okay, what does that mean? Where should that go? And so what's interesting there is, for my journey, that's led to the kids' table, which in all settings, when we're at a kids' table, there's a sense of humility, right? As much as we love Pixar, right, and the great films they've made over the years, at the Academy Awards, the Oscars, the kind of the biggest point of celebration, they're up in the balcony because they're still the kids' table. For as fancy as you think that is, and as successful as you think it is, they're still in the back of the theater because kids' entertainment is that. And I think part of the journey when you're a professional wanting to work in entertainment, there are certainly paths that are more appealing, right? That have a certain zippiness to it because you get to be around these muckety mucks and have these fancy opportunities. And that's not the path of kids' entertainment. It just never has. For as successful as VeggieTales is, it's a couple guys sitting at a computer animating vegetables for Bible stories, right? It's got a base part of it that's like, but it resonates. And when you see the impact it has in a child's life, when you see the impact it has in a family life, and, I've had the great pleasure, because Wing Feather Saga, the book series, has been out so long, there are a lot of 20-somethings who know the books, love them. One of the times I visited ORU, I was wearing a Wing Feather shirt, and these college kids approached me. Excuse me, are you Chris Wall? Are you part of Wing Feather? Yeah, I am. Oh my gosh, why are you here at ORU? And they were they were huge fans because they had read the books and been impacted by them.
Wow. Yeah.
Knew the animated series. And that is why you play at the kids' table. And I think if you don't have a curiosity about the path God may have you on, you may aim for the illustrious crown that the industry describes and miss the kingdom's crown, right? In my case, I feel very much that the joy of making those VeggieTales movies for so many years, knowing that there are children and families who are going to resonate with the truths that we've put in them. We called them nuggets of truth that we'd put inside the stories, knowing that it's like eat your vegetables while you tuck a bit of green into brownie. My wife tries this trick with our kids. And knowing they're getting good things out of what is ultimately for them a fun story, right? Yeah. Well-crafted characters, well-told stories, respects the craft, is not here for agenda. Kids know it. They're the hardest to entertain, let me be clear. They are the first to grab the remote or the iPad or whatever it is and go, next, because they know, you're doing agenda. So as much as grandparents out there want their kids to watch things that will spiritually instruct them and give them, they're going to choose entertainment first. That's just the nature of children. And so if we can make our entertainment rooted in the gospel, rooted in redemptive truths, while being entertaining, I think that's the crossover. So sometimes in our sincerity to communicate what's true, we turn towards agenda. And kids pick it out, man. They pick it out like that. Oh, you're here to teach me. And you're not here to entertain or to tell me an actual story. You're here to just get to a teaching. And we know what that feels like on the other end, right? We're watching, as adults, we're watching a piece of entertainment and we can feel the storyteller steer us into their agenda. And you go, no.
There it is.
The thing is true, man. Spiritually, I've seen Christians abuse this more than anybody because of their desire to get to the truth and they steer it. Jesus didn't do it. Jesus just told the story. You figure it out, right? He just left it with people to go, wait, what does that even mean? And he didn't say, here's my 3 points to that sermon and let me get you home with the Romans Road. He just said, wrestle with this in a story. And I think as storytellers, he is the example of stories that are complex and make me think about and consider the choices I've made and what does that impact mean, and especially in children. And I think this is unfortunately, Dave, this is a place that's been abandoned by the church. VeggieTales had a big run, 25 years, and then it finished, and none came after.
Right.
And it is heartbreaking to me. I remember we were in a big Mucky Muck meeting in 2006. So, roughly 10 years into VeggieTales' journey, and they said, hey, we just did a bunch of market research. Good news. VeggieTales is 98% of the kids' faith market. And it was sad because at that point in our journey, there should have been more. The tent should have raised and more content creators should have come in to serve families and kids. And it wasn't because VeggieTales was trying to block them out. It was because those with resources to fund and find creators and create space for them didn't. And that's an indictment on us because our entertainment dollars go places all the time, right? And if we're not pushing it into the space, I was just with an executive who was really decrying this, that when VeggieTales succeeded, when it was serving kids and family in a faith market, well, a whole market emerged, right? Christian bookstores blew up, right? Suddenly Lifeway, all Family Christian, Mardell, all these got to thrive because great content was in their doors exclusively. And audiences wanted it. Where is that today? It's not in the darkened halls of Amazon or Netflix, really. Where will it go? There are some, smaller platforms that are trying to do that work to serve families. But it is a great challenge, I think, before us here in 2024. How will we serve families, and who will be there? Where are the resources to make sure they're served well? If we miss it, if we don't serve kids well, then they will walk from faith.
They will.
Because they will be challenged in their belief system by other stories and told this is what's true about the world. And these false statements are loud, right? Yeah. Disney is very loud with, from Walt's days, find the truth in your own heart, right? Search within yourself and find happiness. And that is a corrupt path. Right, our identity is found in our Creator. It's out of us, and this inward seeking piece only brings corruption and pain. Where will we be to answer that when folks come out of that search? Because they will try it. They will search inside themselves and see if they can find truth and see if they can find satisfaction, and they'll ultimately be dissatisfied. Where will we as the church be able to answer that, both in children, young adults, tweens, teens, that audience? Where will we be with answers that are different from the ones they're getting through Netflix, through Disney, through Amazon, where they're all consuming? How will we help them to find what we believe is eternal truth?
Well, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on wasn't just to, talk about Wing Feather and kind of tell our audience about this incredible resource for parents and grandparents, but also was to have a little bit of a challenge to our audience and to, Christians in general, that we need to make sure that we are supporting and we're going, and as they talk about, you vote with your feet. Well, in the consumer world, you vote with your dollar.
That's right.
Ultimately. And if we don't support certain things, we've heard this for years from Christian filmmakers, if you don't support it, then more things won't get made. Yeah. But I think it even goes further than that. I think that my wife works in Christian education, and one of the things she's noticed over the years is how much more the kids coming in are either unchurched or they don't know the stories. They don't understand the basics of, the stuff we grew up hearing, Moses and the Noah's Ark, and, never mind getting into the deeper stuff like Daniel and the Lion's Den, but they're lacking that. And I think some of that has been on the churches to spend more time with those basic stories and making sure that we're laying that foundation, because that's exactly what our culture is doing in other things, laying the foundation with those agendas, with those narratives. Like you said, they're very loud, and to have you question things like your identity. I love that you are special, right? From the very beginning all the way through what you do now is saying to kids, you're special. God created you for a purpose. He didn't make a mistake. And speaking truth to that, because all they're hearing is, you know what, you can you can choose. Maybe the universe made a mistake in how you identify, and and this has been put in front of children who, as we know, until you get to 25, the frontal lobe's not fully developed. When you're talking to a 6 and 7 year old, you're creating within them something that makes them go, huh. And it's ripe with opportunity for the enemy to come in and to fill that.
It really is, and there's a lot of pain there. I just listened to something yesterday that was just so heartbreaking for me about this place of ache, and there's a dysphoria that sets in. That's the whole human existence, right? About who am I? What was I made for? How will I develop? And maybe evolution in the universe made me wrong, right? Instead of believing the Creator made me exactly right, and He has a plan for how that's going to develop, but I don't trust that, and so I'm going to search for all these things. And I saw the film Jesus Revolution. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah,
my friend Brent McCorkle, who helped us with a lot of VeggieTales over the years. He's a great filmmaker, but I was so struck with that. So here, that era, they were looking for drugs to solve that, right? And out of that came, well, that didn't work. And then there was a revolution of, actually, there's a truth in Jesus. I think right now we're in another area. And so where will we as a church be to receive these people on the back end? Right. After they got this ache, they've got this pain, like all humans, when they find that these other solutions they may try are not successful, how will we answer them on the backside to say, perhaps there's a Savior, perhaps there's a Redeemer who's coming into that ache and saying, I am the answer for that. Yeah. And humbly let me come alongside and serve you in this way. We know you've tried these other things and it hurt. You were offered it through your entertainment, through other things, that this would be the solution for your problem, for your ache. And it left you wanting. And so maybe there's another path, right? I think there's something in that we, as storytellers, and I'll tell you, I will flip the tables to say, on the same turn, I do spend time with creators challenging them. Tell your stories better. Be good at your craft. I hate the pass of, well, I'm a Christian and I'm going to do a Christian story, and therefore I'm going to not acknowledge there is craft necessary. That this is recognized all through Scripture, right? God recognizes high craft, and He gave us these talents to sharpen, develop, and be the best that we can at them. And so I think for Wing Feather Saga, for us, it was certainly the case at VeggieTales. There was a craft, and that meant bringing in artisans, which meant, well, then the production to support those artisans is going to be more expensive, right? So often I hear in kids and faith media, well, the comparable budget over here from even PBS, which is cheap, is going to be 3 times more than what we can afford in the Christian segment. Okay, well, that just simply means you're not hiring artisans of a certain talent, right? Who are worth their fee. Pixar is, right? Disney is, Netflix is. How can we create the space? And VeggieTales did that. Wing Feather has done that now, where we can hire people, pay them what's an affordable market rate. They're not getting wealthy, but they're being paid for their services in a good way, and bringing about a really compelling product. And that's how you win attention. If your product requires an asterisk, it requires an excuse, well, it was low budget because it's Christian. Still try it out. You're starting on the back foot. You're not actually winning with entertainment, and that's not the path we want to be on. And I think we've now seen, like you were saying, in 2024, lots of others who are finally resourced in a way where they can make really compelling stories.
Well, and technology is to the point now where, it's light years ahead of where we started, where, you could shoot 4K with an iPhone. I'm looking at this stuff that I've seen recently. It's been shot and edited on an iPhone and a laptop, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So now let's just get the storytellers in there to tell it. The democratization has occurred.
I love, and I'm not gonna get it right, the exact quote, but there is a very well-known musician that many years ago, and you would know because he's kind of from our era, and a guy by the name of Billy Corgan, and he was asked the question, something along the lines of, if you could tell Christian music people how to do a better job, what would you give them as a piece of advice? And I'm paraphrasing. I'll have to look up the exact quote. And he simply just said, make better music.
Yeah.
He didn't have, you shouldn't do this, or you should do more country, or, the rock thing isn't. No, he just said, just make better music. And I think that's the key. Just tell better stories.
Yeah, and I believe I trust that the great storyteller, our Heavenly Father has placed in us, if we'll lean in, He longs to tell those stories through us.
Mm-hmm.
And He wants us to tell them authentically, right?
Yep.
As much as He's using our own lives to tell a story, when we lean in and tell that authentic story and can steer away from propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be aware of the brokenness of our own journey and share that. Okay, you're telling a true story now because you're telling the broken parts. I think that was one of the really compelling things when we read Wing Feather Saga as a family was, this has got some broken stuff in it. Yeah. Man, those are some tough choices and some losses and real peril that you go, okay, that's a real story. Now I can emotionally connect with it in a way that will allow me to experience it deeper. When we get the more propaganda, kind of the church version of that story where we clean out all the dirty stuff, just lacks authenticity, and therefore people can't resonate with it in the same way.
Well, in the time we have left, I do want to have you again tell people where to find the content. You said you can download the Angel app and go to the website, angel.com. And for our listeners and our viewers, I have links in the show notes there that you can see, that you can click on. But how can people connect with you, find you online? I know you're on the social media pieces.
Yeah. So Wing Feather Saga, we'd love for you guys to subscribe and follow on all the places, Facebook to YouTube and Instagram there, where we're just sharing our story. And it's sharing the story of Wing Feather, sharing the story of the creators making it. That is a great place to engage with us and just to kind of get to experience what we're creating here, which is really amazing.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. You got lots going on. And to come on and just talk a little bit about storytelling and great content, and we're excited to see where things go with this second season that has just dropped of Wing Feather Saga. Super exciting. And I want to tell our listeners, whether you're listening on the iHeart app or you are listening on Pray.com, Apple, Deezer, Spotify, I know I'm leaving a lot out, wherever you are in the world, follow, subscribe, and if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that bell. And if you're on Pray.com, follow our platform. We do updates. Remember, every Tuesday we drop a new episode, and occasionally we have bonus episodes. So be sure that you are following us for all that great content. Until next time, I'm David Groves. Thank you, Chris Wall. And we'll see you on the GEB America podcast real soon.